The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Hallelujah. So it's a very tough topic to pick, right? And when someone sent me the first round, I picked a different topic. For the second round, I decided, okay, why not? I'll just pick Enoch. So I do my homework myself. Okay? So at least I study it myself thoroughly. So, because when people are just throwing joke about Enoch, the name and so forth, I mean, you need to find something to reply back with. So I decided to do my homework to study it myself first. So that's why I told I want Enoch. Okay. So as part of the theme of the Nada of the revival, it's all about faith, right? You know which chapter we're talking about from the Bible? Hebrews 11. Okay. So do you remember what's the order of the righteous people that we mentioned in Hebrews 11? Who's the first one mentioned? Who? No. No. Go in order in history.
Oh, Enoch?
No. Who's a little bit before who?
Abraham?
Before Enoch.
Noah.
She said Abraham.
Okay, let's pause a second. Let's focus on a second. Okay, so we will talk about it in a second, but let's first try to understand what's the word Enoch mean. Okay? And by the way, how many Enochs have been mentioned in the Bible?
1.
Wrong answer.
3.
Wrong answer.
3.
0.
You're making assumptions right now. Right now, you're making assumptions.
0.
52.
Guys, let's be organized, and I'll acknowledge all your answers. Okay? So,
2.
7.
7. Incorrect answer.
3.
Incorrect.
52.
I'll talk to her later.
0.
0 ازاي وفي واحد
Oh,
بيتكلم
1.
No, incorrect. Okay, so instead of making just random assumptions, let's talk about it first. So first, the word Enoch is from a Hebrew word called Chanok or Hanuk. Okay? That word or that name means dedicated or consecrated. Mean dedicated or consecrated. Okay? The word Enoch in Hebrews means dedicated or consecrated. The regular Enoch that we're aware of, right? The regular Enoch, not Abuna Akhnokh, ماشي? Let's talk about the Bible right now, okay? The regular Enoch that we know about. Does anyone know what's the name of his father?
Methuselah.
No, you're close, but you're in reverse order because that's his son. No. Okay, so I'm just gonna say. So the first Enoch is being mentioned is the son of Cain. The eldest son of Cain, his name was Enoch. And that's in Coptic and in English. In Arabic, it's being mentioned Hanukh. Okay, that's why we cannot identify that Akhnokh have been mentioned twice. But actually, it's been mentioned twice. First, you know who's Cain, right? Abel and Cain, right? So the eldest son of Cain, his name was Enoch. That's the first Enoch. And that's mentioned in Genesis 4:17. Okay? The second one, which we're talking about today, is Enoch, the son of Jared. The son of Jared. That's the one actually we're talking about. Okay? And this is a quick timeline. This is a quick one. It's meant to be a quick timeline. And this is all coming from Genesis chapter 5. All these numbers came from Genesis chapter 5. Okay? How long did Adam live for? I know this is historical, but at some point it's useful for you guys to understand what was happening because we're going to pick on one thing from that chart toward our spiritual life. Okay? We're going to pick a very important fact. So Adam, I started at year 0. I consider it year 0 where Adam was born. Okay? I mean, technically it's a BC and it's a negative, it's a different number, but for easier illustration, I started from year 0. Technically year 0 is where Jesus was born, not when Adam was born. But this is just for the sake of illustration. So Adam lived for 930 years. Okay? At year 130, he got a son and he named him Seth. Okay? Does this test older or younger than Cain and Abel?
Younger.
Younger. Beautiful. So I understand that fact. Beautiful. Then at some point, when he was 105, he born his son that's called Enos. And then when Enos was 90 years old, he had a son and he named him Canaan, and then Mahlaiel, then Jared, then Enoch. The fact that I want to check out in here, and you guys need to look at that timeline closely. Enoch was alive when Adam was still alive. Okay? Enoch, and that's all these numbers are from the Bible. It's not my interpretation, it's not my math. This is purely from Genesis chapter 5 from the Bible. Okay? So Enoch was alive, or actually he was born when all his descendants was still alive. That's the fun fact that sometimes we overlook. We overlook some facts in the Bible. Yeah, that person, he was alive, he got a son, then he lived for so many years. Then his son got another son and he lived for so many years. And so forth. And we keep going the cycle, and we don't understand the chemistry in the world at that time. What was happening? And actually, if we're talking about those righteous people, right? And we're talking about the funeral, so technically, out of these people, Adam was the first one to die. Out of these people, right? Based on this chart. I mean, there was a lot of people on earth, and most of them have died already, and we have an example of Abel himself, right? Who was martyred. But the point is, Adam died while Enoch was still alive. You guys see this number 930? So Adam died at year 930. We're counting from zero from when Adam was 0 days, okay? And technically, if you guys are making the math, Enoch died at year 987. So Enoch attended the funeral of Adam, if you want to put it in today's words. Enoch? Yes, yes, yes.
I think I might have missed something. What? Son of Cain, son of Jared? Is he son of
No, we have two Enochs mentioned in the Bible. One of them is son of Cain, and the one we're talking about is the son of Jared. So there is, I mean, I should have put a little note in there. But if you read the verse, that Enoch was the son of Cain, Adam's son. Yes?
Wait, so basically, this Enoch lived a short life?
Yes. Technically, let me add a small statement on top of what you said. Technically, his life is not ended yet. Okay? Because if you guys read, or you guys open back your Bibles, and open Hebrews chapter 11, where we're reading, verse number 5. And that's also mentioned in Genesis. That by faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death. So Enoch didn't die. He just went up to heaven. He was lifted up to heaven to live with God till the second coming. And then later on, he's going to come and we're going to see what's going to happen later on. And there is some prophecies about it. Yes, sir?
Wasn't Enoch the guy who wrote the book that's banned from the Bible?
There is a rumors that there is a book under after his name, okay? And that book is not accepted by our church because it's not authentic enough to be accepted. It was not part of the papers that were found that have the original Bible. So there is a lot of reasoning why that book we feel, or our church didn't feel comfortable that it's authentic enough to be included in our Bible. Okay? So thanks for this. By the way, I'm not just talking about history right now. This is all for a specific reason. We're not in a history class or a social study class. My point is, Enoch have heard by himself who is God. Right? Enoch have lived with Adam over 300 years as a lifespan together, right? Before he died, or before he translated, to be accurate in terminology. So he know about God from someone that actually have seen God and lived with him. Adam, as a first creation, he understands who is God. He talked to him. He was living with him in the Garden of Eden, right? He know what is God. He know who is God, right? So Enoch heard from someone that lived with God, right? And here's some verses in the Bible that's talking about Enoch. I try to collect as much as verses as I can, and there are too many. Just 12 verses. Don't get scared. So the first chapter in the Bible, or the first part in the Bible that Enoch was mentioned was in Genesis chapter 5, those 4 verses, from verse 21 to verse 24. Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. So that's his son. What do we know about this Methuselah guy?
He's the guy who lived the longest.
How long?
965.
963.
I'll add a little bit.
67.
97.
969, beautiful. I like the auction that was going on. So it's 969, okay? That's Methuselah, right? And after he begot Methuselah, Enoch, here is the whole idea about Enoch. The whole story about him in those two verses. Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. The whole actually story about Enoch is in 3 words. Enoch walked with God. That's the whole lesson. My bad. Okay? So this is the whole lesson. Okay? Enoch walked with God. Walked with God. Interesting. And all the days of Enoch was 365, and Enoch was with God, and he was not found, for God took him. Okay? There's just a missing word here. So that's the first part in the Bible where Enoch name was mentioned, like the Enoch, the son of Jared. The second one, which actually what we're studying in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 5 and 6. By faith, Enoch was taken away, so he did not see death, and was not found, because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Now we're talking about pleasing God through having faith. Okay? So why he walked, or what was the result or the outcome of him walking with God? The characteristic of the journey, that he pleased God through having faith. So God didn't let him see death on earth as a result for that faith. In Jude, in the book of Jude, chapter 1. Actually, how many chapters in the letter of Jude? 1, beautiful. So it's just Jude, but I just decided to put one to ask you. 2 more verses. Now Enoch, and if we counted the previous chart, he's the 7th from Adam. Prophesied about these men, also saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and all of the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So Enoch wasn't just a person in history. It was actually someone that actually prophesied. Right? That's what these verses are saying. That's what St. Jude is saying. He prophesied about, based on your deeds and your righteousness, you know where you're going to go. Then, a couple of more verses. In Wisdom, chapter 4, verse 10. Pleasing to God, having been made beloved, and living among sinners, he was transformed. And that's talking about Enoch. Pleasing to God. In the book of Sirach, Enoch pleased God, and he was transferred to paradise, so that he might offer repentance to the nations. Interesting. And then the last one, or the one before the last one. No one has been born upon earth like Enoch, and he was also taken up from the earth. Wow. Wow. Right? Then the last one, from the book of Revelation. And this is actually a prophecy that St. John was talking about, right? When he saw his vision, right? And I will, and he's talking on the mouth of the Christ, I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth. And if we're saying Enoch, who in history have been associated with Enoch?
Adam.
Elijah. Beautiful. So the father's interpretation that those two prophets are Elijah and Enoch, not Elijah and Moses. Okay? Because there's a lot of interpretations around, but what most of the church fathers agreed upon, that those two witnesses are Elijah and Enoch. So let's discuss in a little bit of a fact how the word looked around Enoch. So from all the verses that I mentioned, or the Bible has mentioned about Enoch, what is the key point in here? What is the key word in here we're trying to talk about? Faith. And through faith, we walk with God, please God, right? We please God through faith in a way that we keep walking with Him, right? Walking with Him, pleasing Him by believing in Him, right? So let's try to understand how the word looks like around Enoch in those days. So he was a normal person, living in a normal world, and that world actually was full of adventures, full of discoveries. Because it's early in the days, right? We're talking about the beginning of creation, right? And most of the stuff is just being figured out in those days. So we have four main things that was happening during his time. And when we're saying on Genesis 4, so that's before Enoch. So these actions happened before Enoch. So when he was born, he was living among a world that has this stuff. Okay? Because this is not of much of a difference compared to what we're living out today. So in Genesis 4:17, I know the font might be small. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, like the son of Cain, not the son of Jared. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So actually, we start living in a world that's called materialistic world. What I say with this, that people start claiming properties. They start improvising or saying that this city is under my name. So word at this point was caring much about who have what. Okay? That's one fact. By the way, all these things, I'm not saying it's wrong, huh? But I'm saying how the word looks like around Enoch when he was born. Second one, Genesis 4:20. And Adam born Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. So actually people start getting out of their houses, traveling a lot, living in tents. So if you're living in tent, that means that you don't have a set place to live in. So you like traveling a lot, right? So again, that was something that's happening around him. People start having that initiative of loving or love to travel around. Interesting. Another thing, and his brother's name was Jubal. So the first one was Jabal, this one is Jubal. He was the father of those who played the harp and flute. So music started so early in the world, huh? So again, another fact happening around him, where music and all its associated stuff start happening before he was born. Yes?
How did they make the harp?
I mean, we can talk about it in historical type of things in your band class next year. Okay?
I don't know.
In a few days. Then the fourth thing, this is not the end of it. And as for Zillah, she also born Tubal Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. Bronze and iron. So actually, people start digging to find metals and start using it. And start using it. So we're talking about a life of inventions, right? A life of mystery and things that's happening, and people are looking for things around. Not just living a righteous life, unless we're being born for God, we're going to stay for God, and that's it, and we don't care about anything else. I didn't say that any of these four things are wrong, huh? Don't overquote what I'm saying. This thing wasn't wrong, but this is the word around Enoch when he came to this life. Your question, Sheikh?
Okay, but when you said about finding metals and discovery, I thought about like swords and that kind of stuff when you said it.
What is that?
They dig out metal, right?
Yes.
So they make swords out of them or shields.
Maybe whatever came out of those metals later on, it's up to man use, not up to what was its for from the beginning.
Yeah.
So my point is, materialistic word, traveling, music, metals and discovery things. Does this sound familiar? Does this point sound familiar nowadays? It's the world that we're living in, right? We're living in a materialistic world that people travel a lot, and we travel a lot ourselves, and Abuna travel a lot himself, right? And then we have music all over the place. All over the place. You name the source, and it has some musical notes, right? And we're using it in the church also. It's not that bad thing that I'm talking about. And discovering things, researches, papers, patents, books, experiments, using of certain materials, right? Yes. So my point is, although of all of this, Enoch made a choice. He made a choice, right? What was his choice? Leave it, please God, walk by faith, right? So that's what we take from Enoch to our life nowadays. His life, we cannot just say that Enoch, he was back in the days, maybe 6,000 years ago, there was no electronics. He's lucky, he didn't have anything to do other than pray. He's lucky. He didn't have TV, he didn't have cars to travel, he didn't have money to use for trading, he didn't have all this stuff. So how tough was his life? His life was easy, right? From a judgmental standpoint of view, we might think that way. But if we actually think deeper to see how the life he was living by, this is what's happening around me today. Traveling, owning stuff, music, discovery, researches, that's the life I'm living in. But again, what is my choice? To please God by believing in Him, or to fall in the materialistic world around me. So what was Enoch's response to this stuff that's happened around him? What was his response? I am not of this world, I am consecrated. Even just by name. I am not of this type of word that's talking about. By the way, I didn't say, and I'm going to keep stressing the same point. Those things are not sins. The things that we're talking about earlier, that's not sin. That's, what we do for a living, what we work for, what we study, what we research, that's not a sin. Music we used in the church, come on, right? But again, what is your choice? It's all about the choice. Do you live in the Word and with God at the same point, or there's a problem in that balance? Who owns who? Who controls who? Okay? So his response was, no, I'm not of this world. I'm a consecrated person. I'm consecrated for God. And actually, from the verses that we just read, he rebuked whoever was far away from God. He told the sinners, hey, you guys are living ungodly because you guys are doing the unrighteous stuff. Yes, David.
If he left everything, how did he have a son?
What do you mean? Remember the first verse we said in Genesis? And he, at age 65, he begot Methuselah, and he walked with God. So, and walking with God has nothing to do with having a family. Because afterward, 2 verses later, it was said that he has sons and daughters. So walking with God is not, you're just abandoning everything all of a sudden. No, you have responsibility to take care of. He took care of it. Okay? But the turning point in his life, as per the fathers are saying, that he got, or we got Methuselah at age 65. Okay? So that was Enoch's response to this world around him. So let's talk about his faith. Because again, we're trying to see what he was doing right so we can copy it. So when we talk about any saint story, because any saint, you look at any picture around you, right? Any saint or any story or any icon. What's the point of looking at those icons? Faith, yes.
You can finish here.
Hmm?
You can finish here.
What do you mean?
Okay, whatever. I have a question because you're saying these things aren't wrong, but what are you choosing? So what is that? Can you explain what?
What is how your priorities work in life? It's a choice. So when you're choosing things, if you have 5 tasks and you organize them or you prioritize them based on your desires or responsibilities, right? So if I have those 4 things and God, how are you going to order them? Okay? So when I put God in the wrong order, so I choose something else over him. Make sense? So Enoch's faith. He was a dedicated by name and by actions. Right? He decided not to live by the word standard. He decided to pick God. Okay? That's one. And actually, if I told you guys that we're going to be sitting here for the next 300 minutes, what are you going to be your responses?
5 hours.
I'm good at math. So something other than calculating minutes to hours. Okay? How are you guys going to feel? Bored. I like the honesty. Okay? What else?
And
I want to get out of here, right?
no, and you want to put on your devices.
I want to play electronics. You have things, right, to do, right?
Yeah.
So Enoch, at the age 65, he's very honest. I love his honesty. I love his honesty. So the point is, at age 65, he decided to walk with God. Did he get tired after a year? After a day, hour? I mean, if I told you guys that the liturgy tomorrow is going to extend an extra hour, most likely you guys are not going to show up. You don't show up anymore. So you guys are getting the point I'm trying to make in here? He lived with God for how long? 300 years. 3 decades. He lived 3 centuries. My bad. 3 centuries. My bad. Even if we reach 1 decade, that's going to be a good thing. So 300 years. He walked with God for 300 years. Do you expect that his spiritual level on day 1 is the same like year 300? So that was actually a growing life of faith, or like faith with God, right? So he was dedicated and he had a growing life with God. And at the end, his life, and I want to clarify this statement in a clear way. Conquer death. Who's the person that we know that conquered death by himself? Jesus himself, right? So when we're saying that Enoch conquered death not by himself, right? It wasn't a given from him. It was something bestowed upon him from God that he was transformed up to heaven. So for the dedicated faith, we say walked with God. And let's see what's the word walked with God mean to us today. In Psalm 119, turn away my eyes from looking at worthless things and revive me in your way. That was David, the prophet, talking with those psalms, asking God to help him and saying that I'm not looking at those worthless stuff. That's me walking with God. Another one, David also, the prophet. Don't lie. He who has clean hands and a pure heart, and who has not lifted up his soul to an idol. What does this mean? You guys understand that everything that I'm dedicated to is considered a God for me. Everything that I follow, that's considered a God to me. Right? Like, if I love money from all my heart, so money became a God in my life. Okay? So what David is saying here, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol. So he's not worshiping anyone other than the true God himself. That's the definition of walking with God. In Luke chapter 9, no one, and Son Luke, he was a doctor, if you guys know that. So he was picky in choosing his words. He was so picky. So when he's saying, what's that? Thank you. So no one, having put in his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. So it's either you're looking for the kingdom of God, or you move forward 1 step, then you turn back and walk 2 steps. Then you move forward 1 step, then you walk back 3, 4 steps. So if you're looking forward to move with him, It's a done deal. It's a one path that you're going through. That's the definition of walking with God. And you guys remember the story of Lot's wife?
She was turned too sad.
Why?
Because he said not to look back, and then she looked
And what's
back.
the point about not looking? I mean, I know that behind me the city are on fire. So what's the problem of me not looking back? You guys, I want to say what? Here's the question, because I want to make I want to make a clear point in here. Was it a sin for her to look back?
Yes. Technically, no, but realistically, yes, because God said yes, because she was being disobedient.
God
All of
Beautiful.
the above.
So technically, that for me to look at that door is not a sin. But if I'm instructed to look at that door, that becomes a sin. That's number one. Second, if my heart is attached to that door, even if I'm not instructed not to look, and I looked, I sinned. Because my heart is not away from the sin. So it's not about the physical look, it's about where her heart is. That's one. And second is the disobedient status that she had. In Psalm also, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. What brethren had anything to do with Enoch? And let's go back to the history timeline that I made earlier. Who he lived with that supported his spirituality? Adam. Beautiful. Because Adam, he was God's creation, himself. And he understands how heaven looks like. Right? He made a bad choice. And he suffered from it. So he's telling his descendants, you know what, guys? I made a bad choice in my life. God is so beautiful, so awesome, so loving, so caring, so just, in a way that if you walk with him, he's going to walk with you. If you listen to him, he's going to support you. Right? So Adam lived with God like literally in his heaven, in the Garden of Eden. Right? So those are two people living together. Imagine that St. George came today and he started talking to you about how beautiful is living with God. How satisfied are you going to get inside of you about your life with God? What is your priorities going to look like from that point going forward? So Enoch, he dwelt with a good brother, which was Adam himself. That's why I made those numbers earlier, or I put those numbers earlier, because it's for a reason. And when we're saying growing faith, he lived with God for 300 years. It doesn't have any comments more than this. He walked with God for 300 years. Sometimes, if we look at us today, we are in the church, right? Is my heart in the church or outside? Should be, right? That's the true answer that we're looking for. If I'm in the church, so my heart is in the church. I cannot be, or I cannot say that I'm walking with God, and my heart is somewhere else. Imagine that you're chanting a hymn, and all what you're caring about, you memorize hymns. Most of you guys know hymns, right? And most of the people here know hymns, I know. Right? Imagine you're chanting a hymn, and you're in your Snapchat. And I don't want anyone to laugh, to reveal anything, okay? You're opening Snapchat, you're talking, with me, and so forth, right? Yes, what I'm trying to say here? You're physically inside, but you're mentally out. Your lips is working, but your mind is somewhere else, right? Your tongue, not all the hymns, or not the hymn that you're trying to say, but where is my mind? Where is my heart? Somewhere else. So that's not a definition of a growing faith. That's not a definition of a growing faith. Yes?
How do you train yourself to be in the liturgy, not get distracted during the 3 hours of liturgy?
What do you guys think? How to train yourself not to get distracted? Yes? Pay attention. That's one. Thank you.
Those things like sit down so you don't get distracted.
Beautiful.
Focus your mind.
Listen, because you need to listen to this. Focus your mind on Jesus. David.
Don't bring your phone.
Don't bring your phone. I love you, man. Next week you're leaving your phone.
We took your property.
Mark.
I take your property. Look at the screen.
Huh? Look at the screen. I can be looking at you, but my mind's somewhere else. So that's her question. I can be looking at you. So you guys need to understand the question.
It doesn't matter what we say, you have to apply it.
You have to apply. First of all, I just heard something in a meeting a couple of days ago. If you want to get better at something, you need to get trained. Okay? If you want to be with zero amount of training, you're going to be 0% better. With one training, you're going to get 1% better. With 100 training, I mean, we're talking about a different scale, yeah, but that's the deal. If you put all your efforts to train yourself to focus, you will focus. And here's another fact regarding focus, especially during prayers. Because this is a very famous fight from the devil. Why? Because he doesn't like us talking to God. You guys are talking to God and leaving me alone here. I give you all the pleasures in life and you guys are quitting on me to talk to God. So he starts putting things in front of your eyes and mind. And actually, whoever owns his mind and himself is better than whoever owns a city. That's what the Bible says. Right? Owning yourself, big part of yourself is your mind. Because your mind is as if it's the engine to the whole body. Right? Along with the eyes and the senses and everything else. But if I can train, it's only training, and people struggle till the day of their death to clear their mind. So it's not something that I'm gonna get trained, do it, check mark, and I'm good, fellas. Everything is good. You know, it's ups and downs. And it's need training. Maybe I'll put canon for myself. So maybe during the readings, the liturgy of the word today, I'm just gonna be looking at the screen and I'm not gonna put my eyes away. Maybe during the reading of the Catholic Epistle today, I'm not gonna look anywhere else. And I'm gonna contemplate while it's being read. It's all training. You need to do actions to reach where you want to go. Okay? When we're saying about conquer this, and it's the analogy is beautiful. One of the fathers was talking about in Hebrews chapter 11, before talking about Enoch, who was the person that was mentioned before Enoch? In Hebrews 11? We said it earlier. Abel. So it was Abel, then Enoch. What is the relation, or what St. Paul is trying to say in here? So with Abel, he offered a sacrifice, right? With this sacrifice, we were able to walk with God. And that's happened with Enoch. You guys see the idea here that's being contemplated upon? Abel, then Enoch. Abel, that's the sacrifice, that's Jesus' sacrifice for us. So he gave us that chance so that we can walk with him. Okay? So I'm having a couple of things. I mean, it's a very long thing. I'm not going to finish it all. Maybe next year I will continue on what I was said. I have a bunch of reasons or a bunch of points what weaken your faith. How many of us here can claim that I'm having a strong faith? Oh, we're in the church. Oops. How about the people sitting outside the church? What's going on? If we're not claiming that we're having faith in here, what's happening to the people outside? I said strong faith. Thanks for picking on my word as usual. Okay, so here's the point. What is faith?
Believing in God.
Believing in God. That's one.
Believing in something without seeing it.
Beautiful. Love it, Kizzy. Believing in something without seeing it. Mark, that's what you're about to say? Good.
Listening to.
Listening. So it's believing, listening. So it's all a mental level, right? It's all about thoughts, right? If these thoughts are not turned to actions, it's going to stop at thoughts. So Enoch, he heard from Adam what is right from what's wrong. And he did the action. He walked with God. He took a step toward his belief. That's why it became a very strong belief in a way that it pleased God. Okay? So now we're going to look at a couple of points. I mean, I'm having like 10 points in here. What weaken your faith? Then I'm having another 9 points. What make your faith stronger? So I'm just going to pick on 2 points from here and 2 points from there. The devil's labor continuously with all his effort to weaken the believer's faith. Is this a true statement, right? Anyone have any problem with this statement? That our enemy keep working against us all the time. He's trying to claim us, right? So I'm having 10 different points. What can weaken the faith? I'll pick a couple of them. I'll take the self. So the self, and here's the problems, and maybe the older guys or like the older in age a little bit is going to understand compared to you guys, with all due respect. Sometimes people claim that God does not exist because they want themselves to exist more. You guys understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So when I say, just a second, I'm gonna give an analogy. Let's say I decide I'm having my own thoughts and I want to implement a certain project in life. Okay? Like I want to build a bridge across the street to reach the second side of John McCain, the other side of John McCain. I want to build a bridge, right? But the city came and told me, no, it's not for you to do this. You cannot do this right now. You have to follow certain process to get this drawings and city and all this stuff to be able to do that bridge. But I don't have someone to tell me what to do, which is called liberty. I want to be free, freedom. I want to do what I want, right? So what am I going to do? I have now one of two choices. To accept the rule, which by the way, these rules are for my sake, right? This rule is not to delay the process of building a bridge. No, it's for a safety purposes, for the right design, for the right purpose, and you can name it, right? I have the option either to follow the rules, understanding that it's for my own sake, or I quit and join McCain and go down south anywhere in the middle of nowhere where the land is not owned by anyone, which is rare to be found anywhere in here, but maybe it can happen, maybe in another country. Then I build the bridge that I'm having in my mind, because no one is controlling it, right? This is exactly our life with God. He tells us, I want to do things, and He tells me how it can be done, and if it's for my sake or not. Unfortunately, sometimes I don't like, or people, not we, people doesn't like His authority. They think that I have the upper hand, so I will go somewhere else to build it. Which I mean, I'll go out the church to do whatever I want, because I don't want anyone in the church to tell me that I'm doing something wrong. This is the problem with self, or freedom. And let me be, and we can have a perfect example from the prodigal son. What was, I mean, if you guys search in the depth, in the real inner depth of the prodigal son, what was his problem? Was it about money? Yes, Ashik.
He didn't want his father to control him anymore, and like.
Beautiful.
That's
Very well said.
And because he thought he was older now, and he can control his money and like that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. So his problem was about authority, right? Who's in charge? So what did he decide to do? I'll walk away. I will be my own God. I will control myself. I don't want anyone to control me. Why Bob or Mom have to tell me what to do? Why the church have to tell me what to do? Why Abuna keep telling me do this or don't do that? Why? And we can put a bunch of whys in here, right? Think about it. The city is putting control points or control measures for the sake of my own safety. So God is putting the rules for me, for my own sake, for my own safety. Do I like it?
Yeah.
Hopefully yes. That's the key word in here. And another word, whether I like it or not, have to abide. Because if I understand the point that it's for my own sake, I will accept it. Okay? Even if I don't understand. Do I understand as a someone that have wealth enough that I want to build that bridge across John McCain? Do I understand anything from the city have to do with ground tests and material controls and safety measures and all these kind of things? Do I understand this stuff? At the end of the day, I'm getting a rule. It's like, you want to do it, you will do it this way. Whether you like it or not, you're going to abide. But at the end, all these rules are being meant for my own safety and my own sake. Okay? This is my life with God. And when I'm saying about the self, and I'm just going to pick on this thing. What is liberty? What's the definition of freedom? Yes? How do you say if you're free or not? Or you have freedom or not? Do whatever you want. Beautiful. Actually, it was there and I just took it out. And it was exactly being said like the way you said it. Okay? Do whatever you want. That's the definition of freedom. Yes, sir?
And the other one is like, do I anything like you want, anything like from PS, like that kind of stuff?
Yes. So, what is about the true freedom? What do you guys think? What is the true freedom? To say that I'm free. How it can be a true statement? Yes.
Like I'm true to like I have freedom to believe in God.
Freedom to believe in God.
Or not.
That's a good route. But what I'm talking about myself. How can I say that I am free or not? Yes.
The bridge from John McCain came through the
Yeah. So that's the definition if I want to do what I want. But what I'm saying is true freedom. And let's say a couple of words in here. I'm free from all that assails the self. Edifies me. I'm free from sin. That is freedom. I am free from sin. I'm free from bad habits that enslave me and from the selfful desires that defiles me. This is freedom. The freedom is not, hey, you guys gonna keep telling me what to do. No, I'm free. I'm a free person. I'm 20 years old, I'm 15, I'm 17, whatever. Papa, Mama, what are you guys telling me? I'm an old boy and old girl in here. You don't tell me what to do. I'm free. Right? I mentioned the 18 to the So you guys are seeing, you guys are understanding the point I'm trying to say here? Freedom from sin. And sin, by definition, is something that controls you. So if you're free from something that controls you, that's a real definition of freedom. Okay? So that's a real definition of freedom. So, Herod, another example for freedom. Herod, when the guys went and tell him, hey, where's the king of Israel? Where's the king? We have seen his star.
Which Herod?
And then he was like, Herod the king. So he was like, what king you guys are talking about? You know what? Go find him, and once you find him, come and tell me. And he plotted that plan to have all the babes of Jerusalem being killed over a span of 2 years. Right? Because he didn't want to have anyone claiming his kingdom. He had a self-problem. Although people came and told him, there is God, he told them back, no, I am my God. I don't want to have any other God. You guys are talking about another king? What are you guys talking about? No, I am my own God. Okay? So that's the problem with the self. And let me just skip through it because I will pick on another thing. I just want to pick on one of those things, how we can what strengthen the faith. Now I'll pick on a positive point. I'm just gonna, you have a question and you have a question. I'll listen to your questions after I mention one point. Okay? One point, then I'll listen to your question. So we know now what might weaken the faith. One example of those things is myself. I am the reason that my faith is failing. Faith is a virtue, like any other virtue. It can be strength and it can be weakened. We do not have to only keep our faith, but to also follow all the means that make it grow and increase. We need to find a ways to increase that virtue. Because when you're trying to train your mouth not to say bad words, it's training, right? When you train your mind not to have bad thoughts or think of people in a bad way, it's training, right? So faith also, you can consider it a virtue that need training. Same thing that what we talked about in the liturgy. I just woke you up, sorry about that. So I have like a lot of points, but I'm just gonna talk about only one point of those. See God in every matter. How many of you guys here understand about nuclear bombs? Astronauts. Not necessarily.
I had to do a project on it. I failed.
Okay, and you failed. Beautiful. So you don't understand. Do we understand that this kind of science and things exist in life or not?
Yeah.
Do I have to understand it myself? There is people to understand it, right? The